Hello everyone, so today I'm reviewing a policy report from the OECD, that's the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, published back in 2019. The title is a bit mouthful, so I just called my review Can Innovation Save Our Planet? Because honestly, that's exactly what this paper is trying to answer. And it looks at how different countries are using innovation and technology to tackle climate change and push for sustainable development. Let's dive in. So the big question the report is asking is how are governments actually using innovation to fight climate change? The researchers picked 13 different case studies from countries around the world, some energy-rich like the US and Canada, and some that are really dependent on imports like Germany and Japan. And they split everything into two big areas: low carbon energy and smart cities. A few numbers I found interesting. Germany set a target to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by the year 2050. Yeah, that's massive. More than 50% of the world's population already lives in cities, and that number is going up. So how we design these cities really matters. And all of this connects to SDG 11, the UN's goal for sustainable cities and communities. And the paper comes to main things. First is low carbon energy. The countries here, Germany, Canada, Norway, the US, and Japan, are all trying to shift away from fossil fuels. But the interesting thing is they are not all doing it the same way. Germany has this huge national strategy called the Energy Band, which literally means energy transition. Yeah, it combines laws, bank loans, and R&D programs at once. The US has LPE, which is basically a government agency that bets on super high-risk energy technologies that private companies wouldn't touch. Canada focuses on helping smaller companies demonstrate their clean tech before going to market. One lesson that came up again, technology is not the bottleneck. The real challenge is getting people, companies, and governments to actually change how they behave. Second is smart cities. Yeah, countries like Sweden, Finland, and Austria are using digital technology to make their city run more efficiently. Things like smart energy grids, better public transport systems, and digital waste management. But the report points out something really interesting. The most successful smart city projects were not just about the tech. They worked because local communities were actually involved in building the solutions. If people don't trust the system or don't understand it, even the best technology will just sit there unused. So what do I actually think about this paper? What it does well, I appreciate that it doesn't just look at one country and so say do this. It covers 13 very different cases, which gives a much more realistic picture of the options out there. I also really like the authors are honest about the fact that the technology isn't the hard part. It's the politics, the habits, and the slow pace of change that feels very real. But there are some issues. The biggest one for me is that every single country in this report is a wealthy, developed nation. So for a country like Malaysia, a lot of the specific recommendations don't directly translate. Our budget constraints, our governance structures, and our starting points are just completely different. Also, the report came out in 2019, which in the world of sustainable policy feels like a lifetime ago. COVID completely reshaped government spending priorities, and the 2022 energy crisis changed how countries think about energy security. The paper misses all of that. And finally, well, it's great at describing what different countries are doing. It's not so great at showing whether it's working. I would have loved more hard data on actual emissions reductions or energy efficiency gains. So what's the takeaway, especially for us here in Malaysia? I think there are two things worth highlighting. Yeah. First, Malaysia's clean energy goals under SDG 7 could benefit from some of these models. Things like the consortium-based grant system in Canada, where business, universities, and the governments all co-fund clean tech projects together, could work really well here. And a gradual carbon pricing system like that Norway introduced may help push industries to innovate rather than just telling them to. Yeah. Second, this is the part I found the most ear-opening. The real innovation gap isn't about having enough technology. It's about trust, governance, and getting local people actually on board. I think that applies just as much in Malaysia. You can build a smart city, but if residents don't understand it or don't feel involved, it wouldn't achieve much. And for future research, I'd love to see some study how these OECD frameworks actually translate to Southeast Asia cities. Can what works in Stockholm work in Kuala Lumpur or Penang? That's a interesting research gap here. So overall, this is a valuable report, a really solid starting point for understanding how innovation policy and sustainable connects. But it definitely needs updating, and it needs to be read critically, especially from the perspective of a developing country. Probably the consortium model from Canada, where companies, universities, and governments co-fund clean tech. It's affordable to start small and can grow. Malaysia's NRE and SMEs could test this. The policy frameworks and licensing described are still the foundation of most climate innovation policy today. What changed is the urgency and the scale. The core tools like grants, taxes, partnerships are still the same building blocks.